Hi, everybody. I'm Lyndsey Parker here for Musicians for Fire Relief, and I'm joined now by a veteran of the LA music scene, a local hero, and a near and dear friend of mine, longtime colleague of mine, Brandon Jay. You may know him if you go back, if you were in the 90s in LA, from Ludafisk and the 88. You may know him because him and his wife, Gwendolyn Sanford, are renowned screen music composers. They've worked on Weeds, Orange is the New Black, the Midnighters. And I'm always happy to talk with you, Brandon. But as I've been telling everyone with the interviews I've been doing, the circumstances under which we're having this conversation aren't great ones. They're sad ones. You and your wife, you lost your home, your music studio, and I think all but two of your instruments in the Eaton
Yeah,
fire.
yeah.
So I'm first of all, very sorry. My heart goes out to all our hearts go out to you and to your family and to all your neighbors in Altadena. And we're really grateful that you're taking the time in your busy schedule and with all the displacement and chaos that's going on to do this interview. But I also want to thank you for your service because something wonderful has come out of all this tragedy. You along with the other resume that I just said, you are the founder of the organization Altadena Musicians, which is helping get instruments in the hands of your fellow musical neighbors who also lost everything. So I definitely want to get into Altadena Musicians, what inspired it, how it works, if there's someone who wants to sign up for it. But I guess the first thing I'll just say, I just want to ask how you and your family are holding up after all this madness.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing okay. I never thought that my house would burn down.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah.
I really never thought that my whole town would burn down. It's just extraordinary circumstances and it was super avoidable. And it's hard because I have a lot of anger about it because Southern California Edison was responsible, like directly responsible for it happening. And I think it's really important that everybody knows that, and particularly people that live there, that you need to get an attorney and you need to sue Southern California Edison. It's a mass tort lawsuit that everyone needs to participate in, whether you owned your home and or you were a renter or you had no homeowners insurance or you had a reverse mortgage, any situation, if you were displaced from your home because of this fire that started because of Southern California Edison, got to get an attorney and make sure you're part of this lawsuit because it's the only way that we can all build back and stay in this community. And it's you have the right to that. It's like it didn't need to happen. It's really sad that it didn't need to happen. And so
I
it
don't know how, I don't want to go, too off topic because obviously I want to make sure
yeah,
you talk about the charitable stuff you're doing, but for people watching this who maybe don't know exactly what you're talking about, like,
yeah.
can you
So
elaborate a little bit?
absolutely. So there's been a lot of law firms that have made themselves available and have been educating us on what exactly happened. And it's the bottom line is there was a transformer tower that was up in the hills in Eden Canyon. There were three of them next to each other, and one of them was made inactive. I'm not certain of the year, but I think it was in like 1971. It's been very, very long inactive tower. And they've been told multiple times they need to remove it because it's a fire hazard, because it's like old metal and it's just been sitting there. And they never did anything about it, it just stayed there. So they made one mistake. They made several, but one was that this was a few day long windstorm. There was an extraordinary windstorm. This was not something that like kicked up all of a sudden. So we were on like the second day of the windstorm and they still hadn't shut the power off. They should have shut it off on the first day and just been like, we have above ground lines. This is a dangerous situation. We need to shut it down. Sorry to inconvenience everybody, but they didn't do that. They left the power on. Huge mistake. There was a surge that happened, an electrical surge that happened on the day that the fire started. And because of that, there's a thing called arcing. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I just learned it from
Yeah,
going to
me either.
these different symposiums. Arcing is when electricity jumps from an electrical tower out into the air and just flies through the air because it just happens when there's a big surge of something. Because they didn't remove this tower that they've been told to many times, the surge happened, the electricity flew out and it hit this inactive tower and it went down the metal to the base and it started the fire on the dried brush because we'd gotten so much rain last year and things had dried up because we hadn't gotten enough precipitation this year. So that happened And there's video footage that started from an Arco station where you can see the jump and you see it hit the tower, it goes down, and then you see the fire starting. And there's several people that with their phones, they took footage from different areas, and the attorneys have all triangulated that and put together a very compelling and very clear version of the fire starting with at this point. And Southern California Edison, they tried to deflect and they said, oh, there were vagrants and there was like a, up in the hills and they started like a campfire. But where that campfire was indicated was not the flashpoint. It's not where it started. There's video evidence basically. So they
And this
find
is unrelated, like in Palisades, that wasn't a similar situation. That's different.
yeah,
That's a whole different thing.
yeah, it's a different circumstance because
Yeah.
their power lines are underground. This was
Yeah.
just particular to Eaton Canyon and Altadena. It was because of these outside lines, and they didn't shut it down. So this surge happened, and then there was another transformer that blew at like New York and Altadena Drive, and that lit the McDonald's on fire and the senior center. There was a neighbor 3 doors down. He's a music editor. His mother was there. So he went over and he pulled his mother out of a burning building and 2 other seniors that were in this building.
Wow.
It just, things escalated because the power was not turned off. It should have been shut down to keep us safe, but instead they didn't. And this horrible thing happened and our town burned down. And so I'm doing okay, but it's hard because it's like, we don't need to be going through this. This did not need to happen. So it's important that everybody get an attorney and build your case. I mean, there's no case. It's just, it's open and shut. Everybody wins. And it's not even like, it works together. Like they all present as one thing to the judge and it's done basically. But
I
anyway,
don't blame you for being angry, of course.
we're doing okay. We're fortunate because we found a place to live. It's a month-to-month apartment. It's not an ideal situation for us because it's small. We don't have our recording studio, but at least we're in the school district for our kids. We have 2 kids. And but I know both of my kids' schools were okay. They weren't impacted because they were in Sierra Madre and Duarte. There were 6 schools that burned down in Altadena. Those poor kids, they lost their home and their school. Some of them, like they haven't even got the school up and running because they're trying to determine where they're going to do it. It's really horrible. But where my son goes to school in high school, it's a wonderful arts school. And there's 60 families that were impacted. Some of them had to move to San Diego and Irvine and places, and the kids are not in school anymore. They're doing remote learning because there's not enough places to live that we can afford to like stay in the area. It's like over 8,000 families.
Wow.
And we're all deserving, we're all good people, but there's only so many places to live and the landlords can only give it to one person. And so it's hard. And like, we're lucky that we are still in our school district and we're hoping to find a house to be able to move into, but at least we're grateful that our kids are not, they're actually in school and we can provide that stability. But it's been real emotional roller coaster. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. And in some ways, there's horrible stuff that's a result of it, and there's wonderful things. And it's odd that so many people were affected, both in the Palisades and here. But here in particular, it's bizarre because I keep running into people. I know so many people. A lot of the neighbors like know each other really, really well. Because it's just a tight-knit community. But then I just run into people randomly. Like I was at Party City. We were, my wife and I were getting party supplies for our 9-year-old's birthday party. I was standing in line talking to someone like, I lost my house in the fire. Oh yeah, I lost my house too. I was somewhere like every day I'm talking with someone. I was in my building and bringing in some, someone had given us furniture. So we were bringing furniture in and I was talking to him like, yeah, I lost my house. He's like, oh yeah, I lost my house too. He's like 63 years old. Like, I'm like, and you're here? He's like, yeah, I ended up over here too. It's like people are just being displaced. And every day I run into people. It's like, I know more people whose houses have burned down than people that haven't.
That's so crazy. And, one thing that I've observed from I've interviewed some other people for this who are from Altadena. It seems like, not at all seeing, anything Palisades versus Altadena or anything
No,
like that. Just more like it seems like more musicians and creatives and artists were concentrated in the Altadena area. Really, that was the kind of community there. So I personally know a few more people affected by the Eaton fire than by the Palisades fire. Of course, all of them are awful
I,
and tragic.
all of it's awful and tragic, and my heart goes out to the Palisades more than us because we have a responsible party in Southern California, Edison. So at least we know that we can build our homes back and we'll have the money to do it. They will pay for it.
Mm,
Palisades, I'm not sure if they've indicated how the fire started.
I don't
Those
know.
people are in such a bad spot because their homes are extraordinarily expensive, and their homeowners insurance, it covers what it covers. But even like a couple $1 million on a $30 million home is not even enough to build a foundation on it.
So
And I've heard about actors that, like, they spent their whole career, working and saving up, and they have their house, and maybe they're not like a popular actor right now, and they have some residuals coming in, but it's like, it doesn't matter. Like from people that are poor to people that are rich, it's just horrible when stuff like this happens. And my heart goes out to them, like I said, because like they're in a worse situation. It's like, what did they do about that? I heard about someone that like they were in escrow on a $40 million home, and then it's gone, and then
yeah,
that's
that
it.
I know someone, but
All that equity and all that everything.
I also want to say that, it's also a fallacy that people assume that a lot of the people that lost their homes in any of these fires, but particularly if they lost them in the Palisades or Malibu, that they're just rich. And just like Altadena, there's a lot of people that live in Malibu and Palisades who are normal people, middle class people,
I
working people.
Someone donated a table to us. It was lovely. It was too big for our space, and we had it for like a week. My wife found the same table that we used to have in our house, and we got it, and it was such a comfort to like have our old table and actually sitting there, like certain little things like that. It was just like
Mm,
so happy. And so I donated the table to a guy who lived in like a mobile home in Malibu, and he
hmm
was super grateful. He's living in Venice. And he's like,
mm,
thank you so much. I really needed it. So it's like, yeah, it runs the gamut. It's like, it's not just like, yeah, it's not an elitist thing or whatever. Like, even if you had a lot of money, that doesn't mean that you have enough money to build back your multi-million-dollar home. And like, like I said, he was in a mobile home in Malibu.
yep.
He had a nice little spot. And the poor guy's, he's in a little apartment in Venice and trying to figure out what he's doing. And grateful that, someone passed on some furniture to me that I could share with him and stuff. And like, it's just hard. It's a real
I'm
hard
so
situation.
sorry.
I
I'm
mean, we live in California, so it's something that we know this happens, but it doesn't make it any easier. And it's just I'm grateful for all the support and people like being concerned and helping. And so that's been lovely. People have done like real lovely gifts for us and all the GoFundMe's and stuff. And we have to make sure we keep circulating, especially for the people that don't have the same kind of presence as people like myself and the same kind of community. And we've been trying and making sure that we know, like, hey, my neighbor's GoFundMe is, at $1,500, and like he needs $20,000 so he can be paying his rent and stuff. And like so many people are like, they're just on top of this whole thing that we're doing of trying to apply for grants and FEMA and everything. You just have your normal life to live and like your jobs and stuff. And
hmm
to have this whole thing thrown at you at the same time is hard. And we have to be aware of that and treat them with grace and kindness and support, and help everybody just to know, like, we'll do what we can to like make sure you're paying your rent or doing whatever. I mean, part of what we're doing is making sure that if you're a musician and you need to be working, or if you're a voiceover artist or something, connecting you, because there's a lot of like great recording studios in town that are offering up free time. And so we're helping them like make sure, like, hey, if you need to be working, let's get you over there and get you in there and do what you need to do while we help you figure out how you can be rebuilding your home studio or whatever it is that you need to be to get you working and stuff. So
So I do want to talk about Altadena Musicians, of course, but I appreciate you being so candid with me. And again, my heart goes out to you and to your neighbors, your community, and the Palisades and Malibu and anywhere else affected. It's called Altadena Musicians because, as I said, you're getting instruments into the hands of, your similarly affected neighbors? I assume you don't have to be from Altadena. I assume if
No,
you're a
no.
Palisades musician or a
So
musician affected anywhere, you can apply.
anywhere, and not professional musicians, just anybody that if you lost an instrument or you lost your record collection.
Oh,
So basically, so how it came about was my one of my best friends and bandmates in my band Quasar and the Bamboozled for 20 something years is a guy who started Altadena Girls along with his stepdaughter. So she had the idea for it. And I'm sure you've heard of Altadena Girls already. So they were the inspiration. I saw how that took off and that it was such a wonderful thing. And so I said, I want to do the same thing for musicians. But so that was part of it. Is like I saw what was going on with that because he's like my best friend. And like every day he's just like, people are bringing in all this great stuff and we're helping all these people and we're going to move into like a new building and we're going to have a permanent facility in Pasadena with teen support for girls for years and years to come. And I was like, I want to do that. And so my wife and I had a show that we were playing at it was called Pasadena Neighbor Day, which is like the second annual Pasadena Neighbor Day. This happened about a week after the fire. And we kind of vacillated about if we were going to play the show or not because we didn't have any equipment and nowhere to rehearse. And our heads were spinning just from everything going on. But we decided that we would go on with the show. And because it was a good opportunity for our friends and family to see each other and to see a lot of our neighbors because it was Neighbor Day. It was at this great spot in Pasadena called the Wild Parrot Brewery. And I played drums in my wife's band. She goes by the name Gwendolyn. She plays piano and sings. She's a great songwriter. So I was playing drums in her band. And then my band, Quasar and the Bamboozled, was on the bill. I play keyboards and sing and have a big group of friends. And so we both played this show and people showed up and they started bringing instruments because they knew that we lost ours. And a lot of them were like exactly instruments that I lost in the fire. Super specific random stuff. Like, I've been working on an album for my band with this producer, Linda Good. And while we were working on it, she gifted me something called a stylophone. It's like this little like funny thing. It sounds like a theremin. You got the like little like pen pad stylus. I used it recently. I did the score on a film called 40 Watts from Nowhere.
Yeah.
That was super fortunate. It was at Slam Dance, but I used it like recently and it was gone in the fire. And then when we played this show, my friend Teresa that plays bass in a bunch of bands, she plays in the Dickens and with Ben Vaughn, she showed up and she's like, I got a bag of percussion and I brought you a stylophone too. I've had it laying around. I thought it would be something that you might be into. I was like, yeah. And so it was this whole thing where people were gifting me instruments and they were exactly what I lost. And I was sad because the value of instruments, it's not necessarily the monetary value. It's how it comes into your possession, like who gave it to you or how you saved up for it. And like, I was like mourning the loss of these things. I had some castanets that Kim Shattuck gave me like years ago. I got to play drums with them for a short bit at the Muffs. I'm a huge fan. She was just lovely and such an amazing songwriter. And they were great castanets that like I used on all these recordings, like a lot of stuff when we were scoring Weeds. And they were falling apart and they were like held together with like I took a shoestring and I was like had it tied together. And it's not they're made by LP Percussion. You can buy it at Guitar Center. It's not like an extraordinary thing, but she gave them to me.
Right.
And like she used them, I think, on the Muffs' first album. And like she's like, I don't use them anymore. And I used them a ton. And they were super sentimental and meant a lot to me.
And for people watching this who are unaware, Kim passed in, I believe, 2019 or 2018 around that time. So
yeah.
Obviously these are not replaceable.
They're not replaceable. And it's super sentimental. But like people were giving me like the exact same kind of things. And so it just helped with the healing process. Like, yeah, I lost that stylophone that Linda gave me, but Teresa gave me one. And it's not exactly the same, but it just helps. And, this was happening. And so additionally, I'm on Buy Nothing, which is like a huge thing in Altadena. Like it's in a lot of cities have it, but it's basically, if you don't know, it's a Facebook group of people in your neighborhood that you can only join the one group where you live, and you trade things. It's just like meeting your neighbors and asking for things and giving things away. And in Altadena in particular, it's a real strong community builder. And we've sprouted several times where like a lot of people join, and the more people join and they find out about it, and then we have to split the group off because it's too many people. And now it's like just the west area and then the east area. And like I've met all these wonderful people that are now like lifelong friends because I've been doing on Buy Nothing for, I've lived it, we lived in Altadena for 13 years, and I think I've been doing Buy Nothing for like 10 years. And I've met all these great people, and with different, they become friends, and we like work with each other and do stuff with each other and hang out. Some people I've had relationships with them and I've never met them in person. We're just trading pie, like, oh, can I borrow your pie tin? Or, I need to get rid of this bag of sand, like just random stuff.
Cup of sugar.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's just like it's just creating community and sharing things, and like asking to borrow things, giving things away, and we're all connected and talking to each other in this process. And we've been checking up on each other and like, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Do you need a place to live? We're still staying in contact, and it's been lovely. And so it's like it's a strong community. It was a really strong community and neighbors that were thoughtful and from all walks of life prior to this. But now it's like ironclad because we're sharing this like community traumatic experience.
Yeah, no,
Crazy.
you're bonded through going through
this
something
thing.
that only you guys can really understand what it was like.
So the thought of Buy Nothing, like I did a post on Buy Nothing. I'm like, hey, raise your hand if you lost an instrument. And it was just like a flood of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, that thought on top of people bringing me exactly what I had lost was like, let's activate and connect these people. And the great thing about musical instruments and musicians is like, we all have extra stuff. Like I had 2 banjos and 2 mountain dulcimers, and like, I don't need 2. And there's a lot of other people in town that still have 2 banjos and whatever guitar someone gave them that they never use, like, and an amp that they don't tour with it anymore because it's too big and heavy or whatever. So if we reach out to those people and just connect them with people that lost everything, we get their stuff back. It was the thought. So it was like, it's like a Buy Nothing type experience for instruments. And so we got the website up and running rather quickly, and I named it Altadena Musicians because of Altadena girls. I was like, okay, it's just a kind of a name recognition thing. And then we've just been fielding all of these emails and trying to connect people. And we say, tell us your story. And they're the most lovely and bittersweet things. There was a woman that wrote a message that was like, my grandmother, we had a Steinway piano from 1932. My grandmother was the first woman to ever play at Carnegie Hall, play piano at Carnegie Hall back in like 1944. And we lost our piano in the fire. And that's the tip of the iceberg.
That's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, but we're going to find her the appropriate donor for it, because other people are like, I have a Steinway. It's 100 years old. And I'm like, okay, so we're just trying to match these people. And so ultimately we got the website up and running and started spreading the word. And we've been like trying to connect these people. And additionally, like Fender and Ebo and Ampeg and all these companies, we either reached out or they reached out to us, and they're giving us donations of new instruments. So we're helping people get those as well.
And the word spread really fast. Like Weezer shared it, and I think that got the word out pretty quickly.
I reached out to them because I was like, hey, I know Carl Koch, who's like the fifth member, silent member, known him for years. And we used to do gigs. Ludafisk used to do gigs with them at like the Alligator Lounge and stuff. Like, can you share this? And he's like, absolutely. Like we started getting donations from people in Japan, and like, it's amazing. But so we're developing an app, and we're about like a week away from it being finished. And the way the app works, it's called Instrumental Giving. That's the name of the app. And it's going to work like a wedding registry where you list everything that you lost, from the smallest shaker to the biggest grand piano. And it's not like a race. Like you don't have to list everything right now. As you think of things, and you'd be like, oh, I forgot I had a melodica. I had 2 melodicas. You basically, if you're impacted, you prove that you're impacted, and then you get signed up with the app, and you create a profile, and you log everything as you think of it. Like, you don't have to have it all ready at one time. You can keep joining in and adding more instruments as you remember what you lost.
It's sort of like a
Um,
registry, like an Amazon, not a wish list
exactly.
or a wedding registry or whatever. Like, here's things I need or would like or whatever.
Exactly that. It's like a wedding registry for your instruments, and you list it all. And additionally, we're trying to partner with like Reverb and Sweetwater so that we ask people to like put a photo of what you lost, but also here's a link to the comparable instrument that you can buy from Reverb, which is like the eBay for musical instruments. It's like the
Mm.
one stop for it. And so the super cool thing about that, if we can get that to all work out, is that you can see exactly what they lost. People that want to donate will search and by the instrument that they have. Like if they have a Gibson SG, they can search Gibson SG and they'll be like, whoa, 74 people lost an SG. And they can look at the profile and be like, oh, Brian Whelan. He plays with Dwight Yoakam and Tony Gilkison. I've seen him play. I'm going to get the guitar to him. And then he sends him a message like, hey, Brian, I've got this guitar. Do you want this? And they connect to each other directly. And additionally, like when we have the Reverb links, someone can just buy someone a rare instrument that they lost directly and be like, ship it straight to them. And the person that's selling it will get a little ding that'll say, hey, this is going to a fire impacted victim, so that the person selling it, they can knock off a couple $100 and get like a tax write-off for that amount. And that's their contribution. Because I mean, really the whole thing is about like, so many people want to help and want to do something. And it's just been a flood of people like sending us messages and checking up on us and being like, can we send you clothes? Can we do this and that? And so it was just like, this is one way to do it. Like if you have an instrument or if you have extra record, oh, that's another element of it. Like
Yeah,
so
the records thing is really cool. I wasn't aware of that because there's like his name is escaping me at the moment. I apologize, but there was a story about a very famous,
Madlib.
no, it was a music journalist who had a
Okay.
really, really extensive record collection. I apologize that I don't have the information now, but there were articles written about him. He had thousands of records and they're gone.
So that's the thing that we're very big into that because like so many people lost and it's crushing. It's like with records, everybody knows like you've been collecting them since you're little, like the first record that you got and then you saved up and bought this one. You got an autographed copy of an ELO record or whatever. It's just like you can't get that back, but we want to start helping with that. So as we spread the word, so many people have doubles of albums. Like, I connected with my friend Chris Kraft and Loretta. They used to manage Touch Candy. And we had a family that lost a singing bowl and they offered up a singing bowl. So I got them the bowl and I went to Chris's house and he's like, hey, I put aside some records for you. Never mind the Bullocks and like just a bunch of punk albums and stuff. He's like, these are all extras. I'm like, great, we'll take them. So we started doing this thing where we're having a lot of pop-ups. We're at the Beat Swap Meet, which is like the LA record fair that happens once a month. So we're going to always be there with a booth. So if you want to donate records and you got some extras, you bring them on down and give them to our booth. And if you're impacted, you come on down and you show up and then you do record shopping for free. We're going to have an event at Zebulon next Tuesday, March 4th.
Actually, by the time this runs, it will have our live stream, because we're pre-recording this, but do talk about that because I'm sure it's going to be the first of several.
So we have an event that's going to be on March 16th, which is going to be the kickoff for our app. And we're going to encourage people to come down and there's going to be people that are bringing donated items and people that are going to be picking them up. We're going to have bands playing and it's going to be just like a beautiful event for people to like get to know each other, both the recipients and the donors. And we're going to be onlining people and showing them how the app works. And then also getting people registered with us. It's kind of a fun thing. So like you show your proof of impactment by like, a FEMA letter or your homeowner's insurance kicking in, and then you're going to get like a backstage pass laminate. And once you have that, you can go to any of our events and you show up and be like, here's my laminate. And then you do shopping for free with all the records that we're going to have available. You can take them other events where we have instruments available. You just show your backstage pass and then you get, you can pick out some instruments that you lost. So at this event, it's going to be a great way for the community just to connect with each other, both the donors and the recipients, because we're all about them like meeting each other and talking about the story of the instrument that you lost and the story of the instrument that you're getting, so that it helps heal that process and you can continue that story. And here, I mean, like, here's a crazy one. Got reached out to by there's this great luthier and guitar store in Arcadia called Lux Vox. I'll have to look it up and get you the right name of it, because I have to say
It's
it.
okay. While you're doing that, I do want to give a shout out that the person I was referring to is a music photographer. His name's Scott Doodleson. There's articles about him on Spin and in the LA Times that he had a collection of 8,000 records that he spent 25 years amassing, because you don't, cruise that many records in a short period of time. And unfortunately, yeah, he lost all of his records. So it's great that Altadena Musicians is also helping
Yeah.
with that.
They're called Lux Tone Guitars.
Cool.
So I reached out to them and we connected with each other, and they gifted us like a ukulele for a kid. And we have a smattering of guitars that people donated. Why don't you come in and check them out? So I did. And like I think I said earlier, there was a neighbor that I met in my building who was displaced. And I said, "Did you lose instruments?" He's like, "Yeah, I lost like 6 guitars." He's like, "I could really use a guitar right now. I need like a smaller body steel string guitar." So I went into Luxtone and was looking around, and I'm like, "This guitar would be great. Is this up for grabs?" He's like, "Absolutely." He says, "This belonged to Elliot Ingber, who passed away recently. And Elliot was one of the original mothers of invention. He played on
Oh,
Freak Out,
wow.
like Frank
Oh,
Zappa's
wow.
first
Okay.
album.
Mhm.
Yeah, like holy crap." And so he's like, "Yeah, Elliot's family donated this handful of guitars and they wanted him to go to some people that lost all their stuff in the fire." And I'm like, "Great, I'll take this acoustic and give it to my new buddy Jim that lives in my building." And so they like cleaned up the guitar, and like that's amazing. And I'm like, "Jim, have you heard of do you know Freak Out?" He's like, "Yeah, I know Freak Out." Like, how cool is that? That like
Super
he
cool.
lost all this stuff, but now he's got this like beautiful artifact that was, connected with one of his favorite albums.
Yeah.
Additionally, someone else reached out to me. I think his name's Paul. He's like, I'm working at the Red Cross in Duarte, and I have this electric acoustic guitar that I like to donate, and it's gorgeous." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna give that to my buddy Jim in the building." And like, so he's gonna go in there in a couple days and go pick up his guitar. We've been doing all these little connections. This was a cool story. There was a woman that did a Facebook post, and she says, "My son plays in a band. He goes to Odyssey Charter School. He's in a band called the Red Pistols. And it's like him and 5 other kids, and a handful of them lost their homes in the fire. And this one kid in particular, it's his birthday in a couple days. His name's Milo, and his favorite bands are TV Girl and The Strokes and Tame Impala." So I saw the post and I was like, "Okay, we got to do something." And so I reached out to Laurel Stearns. Okay, I need to backtrack a little bit. So I'm super grateful for the people that are helping me, that are board members for Altadena Musicians, because it's not just me running around like trying to get guitars to people. I had the thought and created the idea, and then I reached out to these amazing women that are like industry heavies that I've known for a super long time. Originally, I got a hold of Dee Ivet, who's our web designer, and she came up with the logo, and she just like hustled to get things going. I reached out to Liz Garrow,
Yep.
who has been a booker in Los Angeles for decades, and booked the Knitting Room and Spaceland and the Echo, and books the Fonda and the Autry and the Regents everywhere.
And she
And she,
co-owns Stories Bookstore as well, which does events.
yeah, and so I reached out to her and was like, "Do you want to be a part of it? I have this idea. Do you want to be a part of it?" She's like, "Absolutely." Reached out to my friend Carrie Murphy, who used to work at Slash Records, and she started the Reaver, which was this amazing organization in the Pac Northwest. And Casey Mancebo, who works at the Grammy Museum, and she's a great publicist and knows all these people. And Laurel Stearns, who's just like woman about town that just knows
Mm-hmm.
everybody. She was an A&R rep at Capitol Records and worked at Red Light Management. She currently manages Devo, and she
Mm.
knows everybody. And Charlene Holtzman. And so I collected like this team of people to like help me like keep this thing going. And so I reached out to Laurel, and I'm like, I said, "Laurel, I got this. We got this. I saw this Facebook post, and there's this band TV Girl. I haven't heard of them, but they're playing next week at the Bellwether." So I asked Liz, like, "Liz, get us like can we get these kids into the show and get them to meet the band?" And
Aw.
And I asked Laurel, like, can you find the manager and see what we can do to like make that happen? So she did. And it was like this little tag team thing. And then Fender had reached out to us and they're on board with us and they're giving us instruments every week. We just give them an order, like we need this, we need this. And they're so gracious and lovely. So we sent them a picture, like, this is Milo with his bass that he lost. It's a Mustang bass. And they're like, yep, we can replace that. The one that he had, they don't make the gold one anymore, but they're like, we have a yellow one. I'm like, okay, we'll take it. So they sent it to me and they sent me a bass and we got it to his parents and they gave him the bass and he did just, we have like a little video thing I'll share with him.
Mm.
We can show it at
Yeah.
and he just like didn't understand. He's like, wait, what is this? He's like, we got you your bass back. And he gives his dad like a huge hug. His father
Mm.
was a sound guy at Spaceland for years,
Oh,
and he
wow.
lost all this stuff. So we're helping him get his equipment back. It's just it's endless. But anyway, so with TV Girl, we got him into the show. Like the whole band, the Red Pistols, all got in, got to meet this band. It's like one of their favorite bands. They autographed
Mm.
the bass, hung out with them. And another neighbor like saw the post and was like, hey, the guitar player Nick from the Strokes, he lives in Pasadena. Why don't I get a hold of him? Because he's my friend, my husband's friend or whatever. And Nick came over and like, showed up at their rehearsal, and like blew out of their minds. And they all jam with him and like they were playing Last Night together.
If you have footage of that,
Oh, I do.
I
And
absolutely want to see that.
it like to backtrack what I was saying about like how people want to help. Like Nick got activated. Someone was like, "Hey, you could do this nice thing," and he showed up. He's super lovely guy and not like rock star type. Like he didn't think that it was going to be such a big deal, but he like saw like what an impression it made just for him to show up and be there and what it meant to the kids. And like he got super emotional about it and
Mm.
was just like, wow, for him just showing up and doing that made a huge difference in their lives and in this healing process. And so it's all about like people want to help that are outside and that they've seen this horrible thing that happened. And so they want to, someone bought me a blender because like I posted on this thing, like we lost our Vitamix. It's a super expensive blender. And, my kid, needs protein shakes that are mixed up really well. I bought one at Target, didn't work as well. Someone's like mailed me like a new blender. It's
Aw.
people are just being so generous and helpful. And like, it's hard for some people to ask for help in this situation, but it's okay because when someone helps you, when they send you a blender or they give you an instrument or they show up and play guitar because they're well known, it gives them something to do. It helps them by helping you heal the situation. So it's a kindness on our part to give them something to do, to like be like, hey, I'll take you up on that meal that you offered my family to come over and have. I'll take you up on that dining room table that you're offering up. Like I'll do this stuff because it helps them.
And I would also advocate or recommend to anyone watching this that like, yeah, this might be top of mind right now, but keep those offers and gestures coming because everyone affected by this, like
it's a long process.
every day they're going to be like, oh, wait, I don't have a blender, or I don't have a,
Yeah.
vacuum, or I don't have a vase for someone was actually saying that. I interviewed someone else who she wanted to kind of, she lost her home in the Palisades and she is now in a new apartment in Santa Monica, I believe, and has, nothing in it. And she decided to kind of like treat herself and buy some flowers to like, spruce
Yeah.
up. And then she was like, I don't have a vase,
I know. Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is right now this is top of mind, but this will be
It
going
needs,
on for months or even years. So like
yeah. There's
still reach out, check in, offer things, which I
that,
guess is what's great about Altadena Musicians is like it's gonna be an
that was that
ongoing
was
thing.
that was something that was really important to me because being on the other side of it and seeing how a lot of these grants and donations and things work, they all have these expiration dates. Like people
Oh.
would send me something where it's just like uh, someone sent my wife something of a grant that like closed the day before. And you feel like inept, like, oh, I blew it. I should have known because I really need that money or I really need that donation. There've been a lot of donations where it's like, hey, get a free mattress, but you got to get there by Tuesday in Venice. And then you can get a computer, you can get this. It's all things that we need, but they all had an end date on it. And it's hard because it makes you feel like I'm blowing it, like I'm blowing these opportunities.
Hmm.
But we're all just like living our lives and trying to navigate and keep our kids happy and talk to our homeowners insurance and all that. It's hard. So I wanted to make sure that it was really important for me that this is a long-term thing, like building back your recording studio, building back your record collection, all that stuff. It takes time. And we're not like, hurry, 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 you got to sign up for our grant. It's going to shut down. We're here. And that the great thing about instrumental giving is like more people, as they find out about it, they log in and they'll see your registry. So you start getting things ticked off. And this is really important as well. A lot of us are in situations where if someone were to give me all the stuff I lost right now, I don't have room for it. I can't do anything. I can't set it up. There's nothing that I can do. I have the essential things that I need to continue working and just be able to go. But the way our thing works is that it's long-term and you can check things off a box because people will be donating things and they can hang on to it. They don't need to like hustle and like, I got to get rid of this
Right.
accordion right now, but you can connect with each other and be like, hey, I've got your accordion. In 8 months from now, or in a year from now, when you're moving into a place that's a little more permanent while you're building back your home, I'll get it to you. Just have some comfort and know like, we can get all these things on your musical instrument wedding registry checked off for you over time so you can be like, take a breath and be like, oh my God, so
That's a real,
grateful
yeah,
that I
that's a
know like
really good
when
point.
I'm ready to build my studio or
Right.
when I can have that piano, I can get it, and
That
and
is a really good point because sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt it, but it's a really
not
good
at
point
all.
because that was kind of like a lot of articles that were coming out right, right after or, a week or so after the fires where a lot of people were like, what can I do to help? And they were like, some article I read that was like advice of what you can do if you know someone affected. They were like, we know you mean well, but do not drive up to their house with like 10 bags of
A
clothes.
bunch
Be
of
like,
stuff.
here's your clothes. You mean well, this person has no clothes. You're like, I got clothes. But it's like, this
It's yeah.
person doesn't have a place to put these 10 bags of clothes. Like, chill
I
out,
so,
basically.
so many times we were moving from Airbnb to Airbnb, and we had to take two different trips because we were carrying boxes of clothes that were donated and stuff. But it goes back to like how people want to help. It's like
Yeah.
they're giving you the clothes because they want to help.
Yeah. Of
If you
course.
can
Yeah.
give
Of
them,
course.
if you can give them something to do, or like, and it's hard to like ask for what you need and also say no and be like, I don't need these particular hand-me-downs that are like been in your garage and they're kind of dusty and stuff. It's like our whole thing is like charity with dignity, and that was something that I learned from Altadena Girls. It's like she started it, the teenager that started it because her friends were like sad because they were getting hand-me-downs that were like worn out and had holes in them and stuff. And she's like, I want my friends to have new makeup and new clothes and feel good about themselves. And it's important that it's charity with dignity. So similar thing. I mean, with us, there's a lot of instruments that are being donated, and we're making sure that people know that like, particularly like classical instruments and violins and cellos and flutes, that stuff needs to be serviced. Like you can't give somebody an instrument that's falling apart and put the burden on them. So we're raising money so that we can make sure that we can pay to have things fixed, so they're in good working order when we give them to people. And
Mm.
fortunately, we have destinations where you can take them. Bertrand's Music in Pasadena is someone that we're working with. You can take your stuff in there. If you can't afford to pay to have it refurbished and give to someone, that's okay because we'll cover the cost because we don't want to turn anything away. But
Mm.
it's important to like make sure that the stuff is in good working order before we pass it along. And then we're hoping to partner with Summit Studios because they're in Altadena, awesome recording studio and rehearsal spaces. So that's a good destination for people because there are some instances where people are anxious to make a donation and they don't really want to wait on it. And so we don't want to turn them away in those instances. So we're going to have to collect instruments and then just match them with the right people and make sure that happens. So we do have the ability to do that. It's not just all peer-to-peer, but we appreciate the peer-to-peer because we want the people to like connect with each other directly. But yeah, it's a long-term thing to do this. And people need to find somewhere that's stable for them to be living while they're building back their homes, or if they're permanently moving somewhere. And it takes time for that to happen
Mm.
because many people are uprooted and can't even live in the area anymore. So they can come to us and know that like stuff will come back to them. And any monetary funds that come to us, I think I might have said it before, We pay for piano moving, we pay for tuning, we buy people albums. This first family that somebody raised their hand and said, on my original Facebook post, like, I'm a family of four. We lost everything. Our kids lost guitars and keyboards and ukuleles. And I had a singing bowl that was important to me. But the most important thing was my husband had a acoustic Martin guitar that he saved up for when he was right out of high school. And it was super important to him. So I saw that post. I was like, oh man. And this is somebody that I knew on Buy Nothing for years, never met her in person, but we traded things with each other. And then I was at Altadena Girls and I met this guy that was hanging out there and he was lovely. And I told him about my idea and he said, I'd love to be the first donor. And he says, I have an acoustic Martin guitar. I saved up for it when I was little. It was my very first guitar. And I was like, well, I got the match for you. And so
Oh,
he was
and
the
he
very
gave it
first,
up. He gave it up.
he gave it, it was a beautiful guitar. Yeah, he gave up that guitar. He's like, I want it to go to someone. I really believe in what you're doing. And I was like,
Oh,
great, we'll take it. And so I connected them. So they've talked to each other on the phone and like we gathered all these and I got the guitar and I went with Liz and Julie Hermelin and Laurel and Cheryl, and we all went to this family's house and brought all these instruments. And it's just amazing how they come from different areas. So we got the guitar from this gentleman that I met at Altadena Girls. We got guitars for the kids. One of them came from my friends John Chamberlain and Karen Walker. Karen was a photographer at A&M Records, and John was a sound mixer. He mixed some of our music for Orange is the New Black. Me and my wife composed the music um, with another partner of ours. And John donated his daughter's guitar, like Fender, that she learned on. It's like kind of a short scale guitar and an amp. They gave me a Marxophone, which is like a rare like zither auto harp with these little buttons that you press down. I didn't think I'd get another one of those because they're hard to come by. And I lost mine in the fire and they're like, hey, we got an extra one. I figured we knew that you had one, you know. I used that on the 40 Watts movie that I did the score for as well. But anyway, so they gathered some instruments and gave it to us that went to the family. I went to Bertrand's Music because they're like, we have some donated instruments. And I said, do you want to give some free piano lessons and guitar lessons to these kids? And they're like, absolutely. And they gave us a keyboard and a ukulele. I went to, like I said, Chris Kraft and Loretta, and they gave us a singing bowl. Chris, offered up some records. We took $1,000 that we got in donations. Like just our first like week and a half, we got like $2,500 in donations. So I went to Amoeba Records with $1,000 and bought a gift certificate to give to this family. And I also walked around and bought a Postal Service album and a Dawes album and Poolside because they're all bands that lost their homes in the fire.
yeah,
And we
yeah.
gifted this family this gift certificate and this bowl and the guitars for their kids and just gave them all this stuff and said, here's the gift certificate so you can start building back your record collection. You can buy a record player at Amoeba. And they're like, oh, we love Postal Service. We used to listen to this album all the time. And so it's like, that's how these things come together. It's like people can donate money and it comes to us and we give it right back to people that lost their stuff. And instruments come from so many different areas where it's like, a used one here, a new one here from your mailman that gave you whatever. It's just like, it's so beautiful and random how this stuff like kind of comes together. And so we have a little video of that we're working on, of that whole give where we presented that stuff. And they sent me this beautiful message with like a video of her husband playing the guitar and then also playing the guitar with her son, like strumming the guitar. And she just said like, it's made a big shift they're in an Airbnb. She's like, it's made such a shift in our home. Like we didn't realize how much we were missing our instruments. And now that we have them back and they're playing, it's just changed the dynamic of our situation. And their kids are like more interested in music now because of the fewer items that they actually own and that they got their own guitars back. And so it's super cool. And then in turn, she was like, hey, I'd like to help, what you guys are doing. And now she's doing like our social media. It's just,
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing. And
it,
like, I think I've read that since then, something like a thousand people have signed up for your registry already. I don't know if that's 1,000
yeah.
total or 1,000 people who lost instruments.
It's crazy. I mean, we've been getting more and more press. There was I met someone from NPR at just like a function that I went to just to like talk to other neighbors and figure out, what we can do to build back. I met him. His name was Robert, and he was wonderful. He did a piece on NPR, and there was something on KCAL, and it's just been jumping. There's going to be something in the LA Times. And so it's been great as we've been raising awareness. It's been a flood. So we're hustling to get this app done, because once that works, it's going to be so much easier for both people to make things available so that other people that lost can see what they are. And then,
Mhm.
like I said, the whole Reverb and Sweetwater links where people can buy used and new instruments and send them directly to people. There's just like a whole way that this can work. And it's going to be around for a super long time. It's just going to be available, you know.
Well, I mean, it was a great idea, and you're the perfect person to oversee it. And obviously, you've amassed like this amazing team, all the people you mentioned. So, first of all, thanks for doing that. Second of all, thanks for doing this interview with all you got going on. One thing, everyone I'm interviewing, I'm asking some certain questions. I'm very curious about your answers because I don't think we even mentioned that you are an LA native. You grew up in the Valley, like myself. Van Nuys represent was 818 represent. I don't even think it was the 818 when
Yeah.
we first lived there, but I think it was still the 323 or the 2138. We're old school. But anyway, I'm curious about your answers, these kind of like LA centric music questions. I'm asking everybody, could tell me about, like, it could be an album, an artist, a song, could even be a music video or a film, but something that was made in LA, made in California, represents LA to you, like your favorite LA music thing and why.
There's so much. I mean, okay, we were playing this game with my family. Like, if there was one thing that you could grab from the house, if you knew this was the last time we were leaving, because none of us did, what would
Wow.
it be? And so for me, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things, but I was hanging on to. I had like my last year of high school, I ditched school with some friends, and we went to a book signing for Frank Zappa for the Real Zappa book. And I was a huge fan of his, like since I was, little, like started, playing music. And I got to meet him, and he autographed my book. And I had that on my bookshelf, and it was super important to me because it was just very particular. And so, he's just, someone that I identify with as growing up and, being, from Los Angeles, a Los Angeles musician. And, or at least I think, I mean, I always think of him with, he grew up in like, uh, spacing on Lancaster. It's
LA,
like
it's close enough.
Village in the
I actually
Sun.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Lancaster? Frank
yeah,
Zappa.
yeah. That was where he
All
met
right.
like Captain Beefheart and stuff, like out in Lancaster.
All right.
But anyway, so that's something. Oh, okay.
You can have
So
more than one answer.
I get more than one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I, I I've grown up in Los Angeles and been playing music since I was 9 and played in different bands and stuff. And like you mentioned, like I was in a band called Lutefisk that was like a big part of like the Silver Lake scene in the 90s. And I spent so much time at Spaceland. It was just like several days a week. I mean, I met you when you were doing pork chops and applesauce, like your first like fanzine and stuff. And we would hang out there and just like the big music community and lifelong friends and people that I've stayed in touch with. And I was there one time, and Horsch, the owner of the club, or of the bar that the club was housed in, gave me a mug. It said Spaceland, Dreams of LA. Spaceland was green with a rocket ship on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, cool. And I hung on to it for 25 years or something. And it was in our recording studio. It was on our desk. And so I went back to our house just once, really, after the fire, and was kind of sifting through stuff. And we had a bunch of insulation up above. And that was everything was decimated. I really thought that I would find like more remnants of guitars, and I really would only find, like, I didn't even find tuning pegs, just like a bridge here and there. I found some drum rims, but I was really expecting something. I don't know. But what I did find was the insulation came down and kind of secured some stuff. And on our recording desk was the Spaceland mug with some pens and guitar picks in it. And that was one of the few things. It didn't really survive, but it was there.
Wow.
And I picked it up, and like the bottom like cracked off. But I was just like, look at that. Like out of I mean, there was so much stuff in our studio, and it was just ash and just nothing but my Spaceland mug. which just reminded me of like my whole, like growing
Yeah.
up in LA, playing in bands. That was the one artifact that was still there. I'll send you a picture of it because like I took a picture of it, like sitting in the ashes, but like somehow under the insulation that came down from our recording studio, like we had special insulation on the roof, like it preserved it, but everything else was just like gone.
You may have actually already, I'm sorry, everything else was gone, but it was kind of interesting that the mug
It,
stayed, but
it's funny. It's just like, wow, out of
but
everything in the building,
you may have already answered my question, but my other question about
Oh,
LA.
I got to mention one other thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
go
then
ahead.
Greg Frank, sorry to cut you off. Greg
Mm.
Franco from the band Ferdinand that we played gigs with back then, he sent me a message like, "Oh, hey, I've got an extra Spaceland mug. I want to give it back to you." So
Aw,
it's like kind of the
there you
same thing.
go.
Altadena Musicians, just like somebody's got it, you know.
There you
Okay,
go.
sorry to cut you off, Lindsay.
Oh, no, 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 not at all. It's not about me. It's about you. But yeah, you kind of probably answered my question. But the other question was, to tell me about a favorite venue in Los Angeles. It could be one that you played at, or it could be one where you saw a memorable concert at.
Yeah.
It could be one that still exists. It could be one that no longer exists, but um, is is it Spaceland?
It's Spaceland and the Palomino. Like both those places are very dear to me. My mom was a country singer when I was growing up, and I spent a lot of yeah. And she would play at the Palomino with like Hoyt Axton
Oh, wow.
and Doug Kershaw, and like I saw all these shows when I was little, and it was my first exposure to like live music, and I
Well,
loved it, you know. And so that place is super special, and I miss it, and I wish that it was still there. I got to play a couple of my first shows when I was a teenager with 3D Picnic at the Palomino. And it was
wow.
just so cool. Anytime you see a movie with Clint Eastwood in it and they're in a bar, a country bar playing music, it's at this Palomino. So that place is like an LA landmark to me, and I'm sorry that it's not there.
Me
And same
too.
thing with Spaceland. The building is still there at Spaceland, and I have this dream that like we put something together and find the right people and actually buy the building and turn it back into that club. Because I mean, we can't go to the past, but it's still there. We can
It
still do
was
some
it was a
gigs.
very special place.
It was a
But
very
it
special
was a
time.
moment in time that you can't recreate, but that doesn't mean you can't create new memories.
Exactly. And the building's still there and there's still bands playing, so we could, get the right buyer and get that place back up and running and do some shows. I'd like it if it was all ages though. We can start serving
Mm.
some food, because I'm a big proponent of like, kids playing music and getting out there in front of people, so but yeah, those are the two places that are dear to me, and I've kind of got my fingers crossed. I'm trying to put some positive energy out there that someone can purchase that and turn it back into a club because we had so many great memories there, and the owners were amazing people, and the bookers, Liz and Jennifer and Mitchell, like just I have so many fond memories of seeing some of my favorite bands and other bands that I just discovered and local bands. So I would love for that to continue on in some capacity. And it's not out of the question because it's still there. So I'd love to see something like that happen.
I would too. And speaking of putting positivity out there, obviously, even though you're in some very opposite of positive circumstances, you are putting positivity out there. Once again, thank you for doing this, for doing the interview, and of course for thank you for doing Altadena Musicians. And once again, all of
Sure.
our hearts go out to you, to Gwendolyn, to your kids, to your neighbors, to everyone anywhere in LA affected by these fires. And can you real quick before I let you go, just say if someone's watching this, where do they go if they want to either sign up for your registry, either because they need an instrument or because they want to donate one?
So if you can go to altadenamusicians.org, that's our website, and we'll have a link to where you can sign up, where you can go to get the app. But the app is called Instrumental Giving,
Okay.
and it's going to be available on the App Store and on Android, so you can search that hopefully sometime very soon. So Instrumental Giving, also altadenamusicians.org. And if you have extra records or you've got some instruments that have been laying around that you want to share with someone, you know, download our app or go to our site and connect with us, and we'll make sure that they get to people that really need them.